Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm Jane Atkinson, your host and the founder of the Wealthy Speaker University. Today's show is brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker Business Boutique. I'm wondering if you have been out there yet. If you go on over to speakerlauncher.com, you will see a tab there called Business Boutique. And we have several of our favorite suppliers listed there, ranging from website development, copywriting, CRMs, and I think you will find that there are some really terrific companies out there. We are not in partnership with these companies, but we are affiliates, and we love to turn people on to people that we have used before and trust. So I thought that you might be interested in that. Take a hop on over there. Today's topic is once again something near and dear to my heart. Let me ask you a question. Has your in basket ever overtaken your life? Have you ever moved, a pile of paper from place to place to place all around your office and just not really sure of what to do with things? Well, today we are talking productivity, and my guest is Laura Leist. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
I am so happy to have you here with us because we all need help with productivity. Let me just share with everybody a little bit of your background. Laura Leist, CPO, which, by the way, stands for Certified Professional Organizer. Very small percentage of people have that certification. And MOS, Microsoft Office Specialist. Laura's company is called Eliminate Chaos, and she has a productivity and organizations firm. Her clients include CEOs of multi-billion-dollar corporations, law offices, athletes, media personalities, and solopreneurs. Though her clients come from all walks of life, they share a universal need to escape the clutter, disorganization, and lack of productivity that steals valuable time from their lives and puts a crimp on their earning potential. And we as speakers care about that. Laura is the author of more than 15 books on productivity. We're going to talk about those at the end of the show to see which ones are best for speakers. She is also the past president of NAPO, National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals, and a Puget Sound Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree. So, wow, Laura, you have done so much. 15 books. Like, whoa, that is something. Tell us about kind of a little bit more about your journey and how you grew your business to where it is today. You're out speaking. You're really one of us.
Right. Well, thanks, Jane. Well, it's very interesting how the business actually got started. I left a very successful corporate IT career, traveling the world, because, quite frankly, I got tired of traveling for work, and had always been told that I was one of the most organized individuals at every company I worked at, and in 2000, I just was done with all of it and decided to start this business. And at the time, what I was really looking forward to doing was actually leaving the computer world and just organizing things in people's homes, because I love to do that. And so I thought I would build this business and they would come. And as we all know, it's very difficult. And so in 2000, I started Eliminate Chaos as just a residential organizing services company. And it was me, and within my first year of business, I had hired an office assistant. And coming out of the corporate world, my background was kind of in business process design. So I was used to taking a lot of processes, a lot of workflows that were manual, and turning them into computer related things that you could do just to improve efficiency and utilize technology instead of doing everything manually. And one of my biggest beliefs in my own office was if I was going to have someone like an assistant working in my office, that they needed to be able to document what they were doing, so I knew that they knew how to do it, but also so that it was documented for the next person.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 months into my business, so now we're into 2001, 10 months into my business, I was single once again, and had several attorneys telling me that I needed to find a job, get a real job. And I thought, gosh, I have a real job. I just have to figure out how to make Eliminate Chaos work. Mm-hmm. And then 2 months later, it was 9/11, and people stopped spending money. And I had about 4 months worth of money in the bank saved. And I thought, well, I've got 4 months to figure this out and make it where I can live off of this business. And so many people that get into our industry, which at the time was really just kind of the organizing, wasn't really focused on productivity so much, mm-hmm. You couldn't do it. You always had to have like a second job. And I was determined that I was not going to have to take a second job. I was just going to do this. So I went out and did a lot of free speaking engagements to market the work that we did. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of networking. I built a lot of relationships. And I was used to speaking from my previous corporate days because I did a lot of computer training. And so within another month, so October of 2001, I landed one of the largest projects that to this date we've ever done. And wow. It allowed me to hire, and it allowed me to hire employees and have the model that I have today.
So your model is kind of split into 3 different chunks. What are your 3 chunks?
So the 3 divisions, as I like to call them, are residential organizing and relocations, workplace productivity, and then a speaking division where myself and my husband, who joined me, my new husband, joined me in the business over 10 years ago. He also does some workshops and training. Now, how the business evolved was this was kind of an eye-opener to me. So remember, I mentioned I'm just going to go out and just organize people's stuff in their homes because I want to leave this technology behind me. And here's what I discovered. There were, now keep in mind that I came from, working in very large companies and companies that always had IT staff. And so even though I had a computer background, I knew how to do a lot of things on my own. And I started going into people's home offices where they were just a disaster. And they were hiring me to maybe work on organizing their papers or their stuff. But at that time, people didn't really think about like data and information as being something that was also really cluttered or not efficient. So it's right. Kind of the difference of what I call like the visible versus the invisible forms of clutter. Mm-hmm. And what was fascinating to me was there was this whole group of people out there that ran very successful businesses from their home offices, and I didn't know that world. I mean, even though I was running my business from home, there were all these other individuals that I was working with and helping them to ultimately be more organized and productive with their work. So I have a funny story. There was a home office that I did really early on, probably in 2001 or 2002. And I was hired to go in and just organize all of her papers and her stuff. And I was in her closet and I saw a Palm Pilot. Remember those?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that tells you something about how long ago this was.
Right.
So we had this Palm Pilot and it was a box and it was covered in dust. And I said to my client, what is this what is this? And she says, well, it's a Palm Pilot. And I thought, well, okay, yes, I know that. So I said, well, how come you're not using it? And she said, well, I don't know how to set it up. And I looked at her and I thought, oh my gosh. I said, well, today is your lucky day. And she said, why? And I said, because I am going to help you get this Palm Pilot set up. We're going to get it out of the box. We're going to hook it up to your computer. We're going to get all of your contacts synchronized. You're going to have this data at your fingertips so that you can access this when you're not even at home. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But how do you know how to do this? And I thought, well, I don't have time for that right now. But I just said, trust me, right? And I thought, well, given my background, I knew that I could do this. I mean, I had one of those devices myself, not exactly that one, but a different one. So she looked at me, and at the end of the day, she's like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life. And what I realized at that moment, like maybe a year into my business, was there were so many people that ran successful businesses from home, but lacked great systems and structure and just the know-how of like what systems do we put in place for a business. And so I continued to grow the residential side by the residential division by hiring a team of organizing specialists. And then I set out on a mission a few years later to build the business side, which is now what I call the workplace productivity division of our business. And I now have one other full-time consultant that works in the business with us. She's a W-2 employee, a W-2 employee. And then my husband also works in the business full-time and has for, as I mentioned, over a decade. And as you can imagine, I continued with all of the speaking that I was doing. And, early on, I did it for marketing reasons, just to attract clients so that I could keep all of my team members busy. But today, I'm pleased to say that, I make a very nice portion of my income doing training and workshops and programs, and I love it. And so it's really interesting how over 18 years the business has
morphed. And technology's probably always been a part of it, but you being a specialist in technology positioned you beautifully for what was to come in the technological explosion, from the Palm Pilots to now. We've come a long way, baby.
You better believe it.
So let's talk about the systems that you would recommend that a speaker put in place in their office. You talked a little bit about kind of having things out on the cloud so that you can access them when you're on the road. What kind of systems do we need to have in place?
Yeah, so a couple of systems that come immediately to mind is a CRM, so a customer relationship management system. And, I think just at one of our recent chapter meetings, we were talking about doing follow-up, and somebody in our group asked, well, how do you track that? And, the answer was you track it in a CRM. And without going into a lot of detail, I think what a lot of speakers sometimes make the mistake of early on is using like their Outlook or their contacts.
A spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet, yes. I've seen that as well.
Yeah.
And really, a CRM, so you have the ability to, put all of those opportunities and leads and the follow-up and, when is their next conference? So you have it on the calendar so that you can set reminders so you know when to go out and look for, call for speakers or touch base again with your contacts. So a CRM, I believe, is really key for running your business. And now with them in the cloud, you can have that data at your fingertips anytime.
And before you go on to number 2, just note that we did a webinar that was very specifically all about what a CRM could do for you. We actually walked through Karma, Karma CRM for speakers is an actual type of
Mm-hmm.
CRM, and people can access the demo on that by going over to speakerlauncher.com and clicking on the business boutique, and you'll see the webinar at the bottom of the page there. Because even if you don't have that particular one, your CRM should be doing most of what that CRM would do. And I was so impressed. It really helps you follow and track your leads. And I do think that that is one of the key systems to get in place. So wonderful. What else should we have as systems?
Right. So then you should have some sort of accounting system where you can do your invoicing. And again, kind of going back to the spreadsheets and even, just a Word document or sheets, I have found that a lot of individuals will just do a quick invoice out of a program that's not designed for accounting.
Right.
And while this may work for the short term, long term for your business, you're not really able to track and slice and dice the data that you need to look at your expenses and your income and, run a profit and loss statement and all of that stuff as a business owner that we should be doing. Now, I'm not an expert with accounting, but I have used QuickBooks for 18 years and have a lot of data. And so I can go back and I can look at that. And here's the other thing. One little tip about QuickBooks that I really like is I am able to go in and code the type of invoicing I do. So I am trying to work on earning my CSP.
Right.
And I can code all of my invoices that are related to speaking and training as a different class of an invoice so that I can just run a report and it will show me all of that information because as you probably know, it takes a lot of time to gather all of that information for earning that designation.
Yeah, and QuickBooks actually, I think, works nicely with e-speakers. I know that Karma CRM and e-speakers work nicely together. E-speakers also has a tracking tool for your CSP. So between QuickBooks, eSpeakers, and Karma CRM, you're off to a very good start. And I'm quite sure that all three of them work nicely together. QuickBooks is the one I'm not certain about, but I'm pretty sure it does work. Great. Right. So we've got our accounting system. We've got our CRM. What else?
So now we need to think about all of our intellectual property. And that will be found mostly in your digital files that you'll be saving. And so a couple of things that we want to think about is one is a great filing structure for all of that information for you to be able to locate, not just about your clients, but also, the operations of your business as well. And then making sure that all of that data is backed up. And some people still, to this day, I can't believe, but they will still try and back up on an external hard drive when the cloud-based solutions are so inexpensive to back up. And there's one that we're using now with our clients called Backblaze, and I think it's like $50 for a year and $95 for 2 years. I mean, we don't get anything for saying that, but that's where we've been moving our clients to, and we even use it in our own office. And I'm going to tell you a funny story about it in a minute.
Say the name again, Laura.
Backblaze. BACKBLAZE.
All right.
So it's about $50 for the year, $95 if you buy a 2-year subscription. So we had previously been using in our office a program called OpenDrive, not to be confused with OneDrive. Right. And so OpenDrive is also a backup system, and you can set it up and it'll back up everything for you. But it was beginning to get more and more expensive, and then we found this new utility that was actually easier to use and more cost effective. And so just last week, Rob, my husband, installed it for all of our computers in the office. And Sammy, who works in our office and has been working on editing some new videos that we're getting ready to put out on YouTube and doing some other work in the video area, she had spent probably the majority of an entire day working on a some video that we had shot over like a 3-day period and taken about 150 clips and had boiled them all down into about a 6-minute video draft for me to review. Mm-hmm. And I went into the office one morning to review it, and I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, do I have the right path or what's going on? Well, something happened when I went to open the file, and it was now empty. Oh. But Backblaze was in place and keeps backing things up as changes are made. Mm-hmm. And we were able to recover that file and all of her work, which, as I mentioned, she spent a good part of one day and other days working on it. And I would have had her recreate all of that. But because we had the backup in place, we had that available. Now, I kind of tie these two together in terms of having a place to store your digital files and the backups, because oftentimes people confuse a great backup system with just putting your data in the cloud. So, for example, you could have your stuff stored in Dropbox, you could have it stored in Box, it could be stored in
Drive,
OneDrive. Yeah, Drive, OneDrive. There's a lot of different options. But really what those programs are designed to do is to share the data, which is good, but and yes, in a way, it kind of backs it up, but it's not backing up everything that's on your computer. So, for example, if you have software on your computer that you want to have backed up, it's not considered a file. That's not something that you're just going to stick out in Dropbox or OneDrive. So that is why it's still important to have some sort of backup software in place so that if something happened to your computer, like let's say that you go on a trip and the laptop is stolen or breaks, well, no big deal. You can still have, well, it is a big deal, but I mean, and this has happened to some of our clients where their laptops have been stolen or damaged to the point of no return, but they could easily go out and buy another laptop, and within a matter of a few hours, we were able to get all of their data and software back onto the computer and had them up and running again. That's why I think it's still important to have a backup system and not just store your files in the cloud.
Okay, fair enough. So I did have my computer guy come in one day. Actually, he took my computer with him for the weekend, and he came back to me, and everything was organized by type. So all the PDFs were in one place. So if I was looking for a PDF, it was easier to find. How do you think it should, what's a good filing system in terms? I love it because now I know where all the PDFs are, but I don't know if that's the right way to do it. What is the right way to do that type of storage?
Right. Well, I think that's one of those questions where I sort of answer it with it depends.
Yeah.
But it depends on how your brain processes information.
Oh.
And so, moment. I think that, like, and here's the thing, like, after organizing so much paper over the years, and like trying to figure out what is that structure. Okay, really, a filing system is not just a place where you put papers that need to be filed or digitally filed. It's also a retrieval system.
Right.
Okay, and I think that that's really important. It's a retrieval system. So if you cannot remember how you saved something or where you stored it to or what that structure looked like, then it's not going to serve you well. So anybody can put a label on a manila file folder. Anybody can create a file folder, on their computer and give it a name, but that is not a filing structure. So when I was working with clients on paper, I would kind of throw out some categories, and I would just listen to what they would say back to me, or I would look at their face to see their reaction, and then sometimes they might change the words on me a little bit, and so I would say, well, what do you think if we called it this? And then they would say, no, but how about this? Or I don't know what I should call it, but if they've rattled off a few names, I'll say, well, maybe we should think about calling it what you're thinking of in terms of your retrieval. So, for example, if we're talking about digital files, instead of maybe having just all your PDFs in one location, maybe they are broken down by clients, and you could have different types of clients. You could have your coaching clients or your consulting clients or your speaking clients. And so, for example, that's actually what we do on our server is we have folders for each type of clients, and then within the client, that type of client, we have a folder and for each client. And so we have very specific naming conventions of how we actually organize that information. So it has to do with, their business name and then the individual's person name and then a date. And the date on that file folder is the date that we started doing the work. So we could look back and see, when did we start working with this individual? Now, you may also want to have folders for things like administrative work. Advertising could be an example. Any sort of certifications that you hold. Contracts might be a standalone folder, and we're just talking kind of high level. If you're hiring employees, you probably need a human resources folder and then a folder per employee.
Maybe one for all your handouts and things like that, but they might go into the client file, right?
Right. So you might have one that's just called, for lack of a better word, it could be anything. It could be speaking, it could be handouts, it could be programs. And I always also recommend that if you have a program that you do and it's in a PowerPoint or another type of software, that you have a master template of that. And then you could always do like a file save as if you are customizing it for an organization, but that way you keep the masters and have, a folder called, the master files. Some other areas that you might think about are marketing, maybe your media coverage that you receive.
Yeah, good one.
A website is another one, where you have information about content that is stored on the website. So you have to kind of think about what are the general areas of my business and make those high-level categories and then drill down from there.
Cool. So imagine that we have kind of our technology in place and organized. Let's go next to email, because to me, this is the most daunting. Coming back after taking Friday off, I try to take Fridays off in the summertime, and coming back on Monday morning and getting through the 100 emails is a daunting task. What are some hacks that people can use to help them get through email more quickly?
Yeah, well, I think that's a challenge for everyone. So one of the things that I do recommend is that people schedule time during the day to look at email. So if you are trying to take Friday off and you're coming in on Monday morning and you know that you're going to be coming into 100 or 200 emails, is that you've made time on your calendar to do that work.
Right.
I in my own office, I try and have 2 days a week that are office days when I'm not traveling. And then what happens is if I'm traveling on one of those days, then I try and swap it for another day. So I get that time because there's always things I have to do and email that needs to get done. So kind of like I say in one of the books, step one is to make time. You have to make time to process that email. Otherwise, it's never going to get done. Some of the other things to consider is there is a button that you can use to shut off email, so that you, in Outlook anyway, so that you don't see that little pop up in the lower right
Right.
hand corner.
Your
And so it,
notifications.
yeah, the notifications. And you can also set it so that you can turn off where you don't even see the little icon with the little envelope
Like
on the
how
Outlook
many messages?
bar,
Oh,
so that
that's good.
so you don't see that. You'll still see the number of messages, but you won't see the envelope per se if you adjust these settings. And sometimes it's just helpful to um, shut those things off so that you can stay focused on what you're doing. Now, if you're already in email and you're processing it, a few quick things that you can do is I always say start from the bottom up and kind of read through, and there's 4 things that you can do with any piece of email. So you can read and delete, you can read and respond, you can read and file it, or you can read and forward it on to someone else. And a big part of processing mail quickly is all about making a decision. And yeah, which is a big part of organizing. And so a lot of times when I'm sitting alongside someone and I watch how they're processing email, I will see them open up an email and then they shut it right back down. They don't do anything with it. And I'll ask them why. And I get a variety of answers. Sometimes you can't do anything with that piece of email because it's going to require quite a bit of your time to respond.
Right.
And so that's okay. You've got to schedule time to do that work at a later date.
Right.
Maybe they've shut it down because the way that it was written is in these big long run-on paragraphs and nobody wants to read that. So they shut it down because they don't even want to read it. And then maybe they just shut it down because they didn't need it in the first place. And then I'll say, well, then how about if you just delete it if you don't need it? And so that's why I have these 4 things that I say you can do with any piece of email.
All right.
So if you can go ahead.
Let's go over them again. So it's read and delete, read and respond, read and file, read and forward. So if you had something that, okay, that's something I need to work on later, I'm going to file that into some sort of, here are my things that I need to get done file.
Well, you could, although I think filing it into another folder could be problematic for some if they are not used to going and looking at that folder. So you could instead schedule the time on your calendar where you are doing that work. You could flag it in your inbox.
Right.
You could, in Outlook, you could actually take the email and drag it down on top of the calendar item, and it'll open up a calendar appointment, and you could schedule it right from there.
That's cool.
So there's some different things that you could do, but again, it kind of comes back to making time. Now, there are emails that you can respond to. That's what I call the 2-minute rule. So in 2 minutes or less, you can respond to someone really quickly and get it off your plate. So as you are processing the email, if you're starting from the bottom up, you want to start from the bottom up and see what email you can just instantly delete. And then if there's a chain of email, like a conversation going back and forth, you don't want to necessarily respond to the first one you see, because further up you may see already some responses and you don't want to look like you weren't paying attention. So I say get through all the email first on that Monday morning, then go back, find where there's the conversation, do the input that you need, and get rid of the rest of the emails where there's that conversation. Now, there's other quick things that you can do as well with emails in terms of filing them away. And so for me, whenever I'm working on a speaking engagement, because a lot of my work is customizing our programs, is I create what's called a quick step in Outlook. And I have folders with my client's name. So if I have that folder down further in my email structure, all I have to do is click on this one quick step button and it automatically files my email into that folder. So I also recommend that people think about making client folders in their inbox structure
Mm-hmm.
so that it has the client name, the date of the engagement, and then you can do subfiles in there if you need to. But that would be a gathering place for all the information that you need for that client so it doesn't live in the inbox and it's not cluttering it up. Because a lot of times we just need to get all of that data in one place, and then after the engagement, you can go through and clean it out. But you don't want that to, clutter up what you're trying to look at and work on every day. And then if you are funneling it over into that client folder, when you are ready to work on something for that event, then you just have one place to go and it's right there.
I like it. For those of us who are Mac users or Gmail users, I'm assuming that a lot of these same features are available in those programs. I think it sounds like to me Outlook has gone, several steps beyond in terms of the robustness of the email, but I haven't been on Outlook for a long time, so I'm not really sure about that. I do have I'm a Mac girl, and I switched away from Mac Mail because it got stuck for me, and I run everything now through Gmail, which is kind of working, but it's not great.
Mm-hmm. So on a Mac, I'm not an expert on Gmail or Google at all. I primarily, with my clients, focus on the Microsoft suite of products.
Right.
But I will tell you I do have a Gmail account that I use for very specific things, and you can create a file structure like I'm talking about
Yeah.
in a similar fashion with similar naming conventions. But in terms of quick steps, I don't know what the Gmail equivalent is or if it's even possible. Maybe someone can let us know about that. But
I will tell you
go ahead.
one thing that you can do in this, which is there are things that they kind of test out. I think they call them like beta tests. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a thing called canned responses, and you probably have this in Outlook. I think it was called something else, where you can drop in the same text. If you have, like, part of the system is that, okay, when I get this inquiry, this is how I respond, and now I can go into my canned responses and say, okay, here's the link to book some time with me, or here's the link to our Zoom call, or whatever it might be. And those are all in
Right.
there. What are they called? Quick parts or something in Outlook?
Yes, in Outlook, they're called quick parts or email templates.
Mm.
And a lot of people confuse them for um, a signature. So even in a program, a workshop that I did on Friday, someone said, "Oh, I used to use an email signature for that." And I've seen other people teach
Mm-hmm.
having this canned, information as using a signature, which is not how Outlook was designed.
Right.
But truly, the quick parts or the email templates is the way to go. And when I was speaking for our Northwest chapter of NSA
Mm-hmm.
last year, I did an example of a quick part, and this kind of made everyone laugh. So I actually have a quick part that is called Speaking for Free. So someone can't see the quick part title, but I have a canned response when
Yeah.
someone comes to me and says, "Could you just come and do this,
Right.
for marketing reasons for 1 hour?" I was like, I don't want to have to think about that canned response every time. So
Right.
I literally have one that's called Speaking for Free. So,
Perfect. Drop it in. Thank you so much for thinking of me, and here's why I'm not going to do that. So I love that, and I love that you have systems and everything in place as a part of email, because if we're reinventing the wheel every single time on everything that we do, a proposal, an agreement, all of those things should be templates that are actually merging with some information that you've put into your CRM, should they not?
yes, exactly. And So there's so many different things you can do with the email templates. We have email templates in our office that are set up for a business consulting engagement with a link to our digital service agreement. And all we have to do is literally change the name and the date of the engagement and put in the email address and attach a cover letter, and we're done and hit send. It takes all of about 5 minutes to send that out. We also have another one that we use for various speaking programs, and depending on the detail of the program, we have multiple email templates that are set up for that. And then after a speaking engagement, we have our feedback survey that we send out, and that's also already pre-templated with a link for someone to fill out. And there's several other templates that we use internally to keep all of the employees on the same page. And so, but along the lines of the email templates, I think another thing that we also need to be aware of and think about is, a lot of times we're trying to get responses from our clients as well about information that we need for the day that we're on site. And, we travel, we're really busy, we're not always in the office. And so how do you do this? And one of the things that I found to be very effective is, and again, this is a Microsoft Outlook tip, is to use a custom follow-up flag that you set when you're either sending a new email or replying to an email. And by setting the custom follow-up flag, what it allows you to have is that email live in your sent file instead of you copying yourself, which does not look very good. So, we don't want it to come back to you and live in your inbox and make more email for you. Right. But rather, you set the custom flag, you send it, it lives in your sent file, and then on the date that you've scheduled for it to pop up in your reminders, it shows up just like an appointment, but instead it's an email. And now, if you haven't gotten that information that you need from someone by that specific date, that's your cue to go back and, email them again and say, hey, just checking in. I know we're on a deadline for this. Can you, respond to these 3 questions or whatever information that you need. So using that custom follow-up flag with your templates is also very helpful.
Very nice. And I know that when we walked through the CRM for Karma for speakers, they did have a lot of that built right into the nice robust, so that you were always on top of your engagements and kind of where things needed to be. And checklists, love checklists. Okay, really quickly before we close, project management tool. When you start to get team around you, I use Asana with some of the suppliers that I work with. What is your team tool?
So our team also uses Asana.
Okay.
And I recommend it to many of our clients. I love it. It's very easy to use. It's intuitive. You can try it for free. Many of my clients just use the free version of it. We like the fact that all of your communication can stay within inside of Asana, but you can also get email information as well, and easy to manage tasks and projects on your phone as well with their app. And if you've got staff, it's a great way for you to be able to delegate out different tasks or projects that need to get done, so that you're not having to really think about it, but you can put it out there and just get it out of your brain.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about which books might be best for speakers that you offer, and we'll put a plug in for that, and we'll put links in the show notes. We'll put everything that we've talked about today in the show notes, by the way. Which books of your 15 books, really 15, that's crazy. That's a lot of books.
Well, I would say about 10 of them are all on the topic of Outlook and OneNote, because I write one for almost every single version of Outlook that comes out.
I
so that's why there's Yeah, that's why there's so many. But there's one book, Eliminate the Chaos at Work, 25 Techniques to Increase Your Productivity. That can be found on Amazon, both in hard copy as well as downloadable version.
Great.
And then the Increase Your Productivity using Microsoft Outlook. There is a digital version available online. It's the 2010, so I did not do a 2013 in digital, but I do have a 2013 in print that people can just email me directly and I can ship them a copy of that. I typically just use those books now for my internal training and consulting, so I don't have them published at this time.
Let's give everyone your email address.
So my email is Laura, Laura, at eliminatechaos.com, or you can go to eliminatechaos.com as well, and then go into any one of the 3 websites for any information that you're looking for.
Great. Well, Laura, we've given everybody so much to think about today. We may need to do a part 2 to this, but I really appreciate it. We're going to put all of the links to the interesting things that you mentioned, Backblaze, and all the various softwares into the show notes so that people can find those very easily. If you're listening in on our podcast out on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, please leave us a rating. Let us know that you appreciated it and a comment. And with that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speakers Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.